A solitary traveler discovers an alien bride deemed unwanted at the station and, without hesitation, claims her as his own. Beginning, The Man and the Empty Roads. The station was quieter than usual, and quiet was the kind of sound Levon had grown used to. He was a solitary traveler by necessity, not by design. Years ago, he had carried laughter in his chest and warmth in his hands, but time had a way of stripping things down. Now, he wandered across star systems with little more than a patched jacket, a half-broken datapad, and a ship that coughed more than it purred. The interstellar port of Dorian 6 was no one's final destination. It was a dock for transit, a liminal place where people moved quickly, rarely lingering. Levon liked it here. People didn't look at him twice, and he could disappear into the churn of arrivals and departures. He had stopped only because his ship required coolant, the old model was thirsty, and because he hadn't eaten a proper meal in 3 days. His stomach complained louder than his heart these days. Levon sat at the edge of the concourse, sipping a tin of bitter CAF, when he noticed the commotion. A crowd had gathered, not the usual restless line for boarding, but something with a sharper edge, laughter, sneers, and pity disguised as amusement. At the center stood a woman, or what looked like one, though she wasn't human. She was tall, her posture rigid like she'd been trained in ceremony. A long silver robe fell around her frame, slightly frayed at the edges. Her hair shimmered a pale lavender, braided with thin metallic threads that caught the station lights. But her face was still, stoic, as if she had been taught not to show pain even when abandoned. On the floor beside her lay a trunk. Across its lid, someone had scrawled in standard, "Unwanted. Too old." Levon frowned. He sipped his CAF again, but the bitterness now tasted of anger. Middle, the bride no one wanted. He had heard of such practices out in the colonies. Certain alien clans arranged marriages across systems, treaties sealed not with ink, but with brides. Women were sent to waiting husbands, often never meeting them until the docking gates hissed open. Apparently, this one had been rejected. "Poor thing," a merchant whispered. "Too old for her kind, I heard," another muttered. Bride was supposed to be 20 cycles, not 30. Who would take her now? Their voices burned like acid in Levin's ears. He wasn't noble, wasn't the kind of man who swept in to save the forsaken. But something about the sight of her trunk, her life reduced to a crude label, made his chest ache in ways it hadn't for years. The woman stood silently, eyes fixed forward, ignoring the whispers. She must have been standing there for hours, waiting for someone who would never come. Waiting with the dignity of a statue, though every muscle in her must have been screaming to collapse. Levon rose before he realized he was moving. He approached the crowd, which parted slightly, more curious than welcoming. His boots clicked against the steel floor as he stopped in front of her. "What's your name?" he asked. The woman turned her head slowly, as if unsure he was speaking to her. Her eyes were striking, deep silver, reflecting light like water at dusk. "I am Sira of the Vayari," she said, her voice low, trained, careful. "Where is Yord intended?" Her lips tightened, not quite a frown.
"Gone.
They deemed me too old for binding. Left before I disembarked." The crowd tittered again. Levon wanted to spit. Instead, he did something reckless, something he might regret tomorrow but knew he would regret more if he didn't act now. "Then I'll take you," he said simply. The station seemed to freeze. Even the announcement drones paused, as if stunned. Her silver eyes widened slightly. "Take me?" "Yes," Levon said. He shrugged, as if it were the most obvious decision in the galaxy. "You came here to be wed, didn't you?" "I'm a man with no ties." You're a woman who deserves better than being left at a dock like abandoned freight. So why not? The crowd erupted into whispers, half scandalized, half amused. But Scylla did not move. She studied him, as though peeling back the layers of his skin to see if he was mocking her. You would bind yourself to one cast aside, she asked. I'd bind myself to someone who looks me in the eye with more strength than I've ever seen, Levon replied. A long silence stretched. Then, to the astonishment of all, she bowed her head. Then I accept. The union at the dock. Alien marriages were curious things. Some required entire rituals with witnesses, but the Ve'ari, Levon remembered, had a simpler clause. Words of intent, spoken and accepted, were binding. So there, beneath the cold lights of the station, amid the stares of strangers, Scylla and Levon exchanged vows. Hers in careful, formal tones. His in rough, unpolished words. Yet both were real. The trunk was lifted onto his shoulder, heavier than it looked. Together, they walked away, leaving the gossip behind. His ship was hardly the palace she deserved. A cramped freighter, scarred from too many meteor showers and patched with mismatched panels. But Scylla stepped aboard as though she were entering a temple. This is your vessel, she said, running her fingers across the console. Ours now, Levon corrected. For the first time, she smiled. Faint, fleeting, but real. Middle expansion. 2 lonely souls. Days bled into weeks. Traveling together was strange at first. 2 strangers bound by an impulsive vow. She cooked with precision, blending herbs from her trunk into meals that made his galley smell like home for the first time. She repaired the stitching on his jacket. She even sat quietly beside him during long jumps, humming tunes from her world. Levon found himself speaking more than he had in years. He told her of his travels, the frozen mines of Kestrel, 9, the sunstorms of Aridon. She listened, silver eyes soft, as though every word mattered. In turn, she spoke of the Ve'ari, a culture where women were bartered, where worth was measured in youth and fertility. Her 30 cycles had branded her unworthy, though she was stronger than any woman he'd known. Loneliness, Levon realized, had been eating them both alive. And somehow, fate, or perhaps cruelty, had set them on the same path. One night, as they drifted through empty space, he asked quietly, "If I hadn't stepped forward at the dock, what would have happened to you?" She hesitated. Then, in a voice like breaking glass, said, "I would have been sent back. No clan takes a returned bride. I would have lived in exile, nameless." Levon reached across the console, his calloused hand covering hers. Not anymore. Her fingers tightened around his. The rising conflict. But not all stories end with peace. 3 months into their wandering, a transmission crackled through the ship's comms. A Ve'ari vessel hailed them. Their insignia glowed on screen, sharp as blades. "This is Clan Ve'ari Command," the voice said. "You harbor property of our people. Release her at once." Levon bristled. "Property? She's my wife." Scylla stepped into view. Her face was pale but steady. "They will not allow this union," she murmured. The clan considered her defiance a breach of contract. To them, she was a commodity, not a person. And commodities returned unpaid had to be reclaimed or destroyed. "Refuse," the voice warned, "and we will take her by force." Levon's ship was no match for theirs. One freighter against a warship? It was suicide. But he